welcome back. We are going to make a potato crust pizza for you really quick. Some of you may have heard of zucchini bread or cauliflower crust pizzas. What that does is it takes the flour out of the traditional dough process when we're making a pizza dough and replaces it with either a vegetable, or today we are going to use a starch, the potato. So the recipe that I am using was uploaded during week 2. It was one of the recipes that you annotated during our Schoology lessons. So that recipe, the full recipe with all of the full steps, are available in Schoology, again, week 2. So what I've done is I have already preheated the oven at 400 degrees. So the process of cooking the potatoes, because we're going to dice them, it doesn't take that long, and 400 degrees, some ovens take a while to preheat to that. So always read over your entire recipe, just like we're doing with the annotating, that's why, and preheat. That way, once their mash that we're going to create is complete, you can go ahead and get ready to put it in the oven, and you don't have to wait any longer. So I'm going to come back to this mise en place in just a few minutes while we get the potatoes boiling. So first things first, I have taken about 2.5 cups following the recipe and chopped up these potatoes. If you pay attention, is this a true dice? Even though the recipe did say diced potatoes, if you look at this, would we call this a true dice? No, we would not. All right. Remember that a dice, a perfect dice, is all perfect squares. They are all completely uniform. So technically, what I have done here is chop, and I have just made sure that they are all approximately the size, same size, and somewhat near the same shape. I don't have really thin pieces and really thick pieces. They're all about the same. So as I was working those and I was peeling them and dicing them as I went, I was soaking them in cold water. Remember, we've talked about that in class as well as in some of the other videos. That is to make sure that we don't have any browning on the potatoes. So now what we're going to do is we are going to strain these potatoes, put them in our saucepan, and get ready to boil them. So I'm going to take both of these things over to the stovetop. Really easily, I'm going to strain using the colander. We are going to use this mixing bowl in a little bit, so I'm going to bring it back over here. All right, because there's excess starch, I do like to use a little bit of cold water and just rinse off the potatoes one last time before we put them into the saucepan. All right, we'll load this here. Now what we want to do, I know you can't see it, but what we want to do is we want to cover the potatoes and leave about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of water over top of the potato. All right, as we boil it, it's going to absorb some of that water, so we need to make sure that we cover it with more more water higher than the potato level. So I'm going to do that real fast. Now, some people might ask, why did we just strain the water to add new water? And I do get that, I completely understand that. One thing that you want to think about is the water that your potatoes were sitting in was your starchy water. So we want to use nice clean water that is fresh and is just going to work on the cooking process. Okay, so I'm going to move this up here. Obviously most of you would be doing this on your stovetops. I'm doing it over here just so you can see a little bit better. All right, I'm going to turn this up to a decently high flame because we want to get our water boiling. So we're going to go ahead and have the potatoes already in there. We'll let the potatoes we'll let the water, come up to a boil, and then let the potatoes cook for about another 10 minutes once it's reached that boil. Remember that when we use temperature gauges, boil is a temperature because we want to keep it really, really hot. All right, so I'm going to cover this, and that speeds up the process a little bit, and move that over here. All right, next, when we look at our other mise en place, I have already portioned everything out just to be a little bit faster here. One thing that you're going to need, your pans that you're going to need, is either a pizza pan or a bread pan that already has the perforated holes in it. This is the pan that I'm going to use today. Some people may not have it at home. That's perfectly fine if you don't. If you don't, you can use a traditional sheet pan, or a lot of people will call it at home a cookie pan. But again, our culinary terminology, sheet pan. So I borrowed this one from school. It's a little bit beat up. A couple different ways that you can line it, the mash is going to be sticky. It's going to be like dough. So you want to make sure that it doesn't stick to the pan. So you either want to use cooking spray and use a heavy amount of cooking spray. You can use a little bit of extra butter and a paper towel and just sweep it across the pan and make sure that it's really coated on any area that you're going to put your pizza crust. Or you can use parchment paper. A lot of you know that I love parchment paper. It just makes things nice and easy, and then it's a little bit less cleanup. So this is what you can use if you don't have a pizza pan. Sheet pans, parchment paper, sheet pans, cooking spray, sheet pans, grease it. All right, so I'm going to move these out of the way because we're not going to use them. All right, like I said, I am going to use the pizza pan today. So that'll be in just a little bit. All right, in the meantime, we have our other ingredients. We've got a tablespoon of butter. We have 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese, 1 garlic clove minced. Again, many of you, if you remember in the Titan Terrace, we use the garlic and water, the canister, and that's what I use at home too. I don't usually buy fresh cloves. I buy the already peeled and cut. It just makes it a lot easier. So it comes in a jar in every grocery store, or you can buy some of the larger canisters at like a Gordon Foods, like we buy for school. So for every clove of garlic, it equals to about a teaspoon. If you like the taste of garlic, you can add a little bit more. I went a little bit heavier because this is going to be a pizza crust, so I really want that garlic taste to it, okay? And then we're going to use 1 egg, and it needs to be slightly beaten, and we'll do that in a minute. One thing that I wanted to point out to you is if you looked in that recipe, the seasonings were listed as 1 tablespoon mixed. Sometimes you'll see that on a recipe, and what that means is it's not going to be 1 tablespoon each. So the 4 different ingredients that were listed were salt, pepper, basil, and oregano, and it said 1 tablespoon mixed. So that means that combination, we need 1 tablespoon of the combination. So you could mix a large batch of that in a bowl and scoop it out, or if you use your measurements that we work on in class, you can kind of learn to eyeball some of those measurements. So if you remember, 1 tablespoon, right, is equal to 3 teaspoons, right? If we're doing the measurements to be precise, because we have 3 different spice and seasoning ingredients, we're going to go just under a teaspoon. So I'm actually going to use a 3/4 teaspoon and make each of those equal. All right, so 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to do 3/4 of a teaspoon of pepper, 3/4, excuse me, of oregano, and a little bit of extra fell in there. That's perfectly fine. And then lastly, we have the basil. Same thing, 3/4 of a teaspoon. All right, so that is going to be just about 1 tablespoon, and that's going to be that mixture that we want. So that is a combined mixture. If you ever see that word mixed, that's what that means. All right, it does create 1 extra step. It's not super common to see it on recipes, but sometimes you do, and if you didn't know what that meant, it probably would be common for you to add 1 tablespoon of each, and then that would make your seasoning very, very salty and very, very peppery. Okay, so I am going to crack and lightly beat the egg. We're going to let the potatoes finish cooking, and then we'll come back and we'll make our dough. All right? All right, so our potatoes have finished boiling, and we have already strained them. All right, so now what we're going to do now is we're going to transfer these soft potatoes back into a mixing bowl. The original bowl should usually be enough space, so hopefully this is. All right, and then we're going to add all of our other ingredients, okay? So the butter is going to go first. I usually try to chunk up some of the butter in a couple different pieces. I'm actually just going to do this by hand. Just so it'll start to melt in different areas as you're adding other things. Then I will add the egg because it gives a little bit of liquid to the butter and moves it around. All right, you might want to mix that or give that a stir before you add the herbs and the spices. That way the heat from the potatoes starts to melt the butter before you add everything else. All right, then we're gonna add the garlic, our herbs and spices. And then I'm gonna add about half of the Parmesan cheese. I'm not gonna quite add all of it right now. Oh, actually, I did by accident, so we might as well. Two things that you can do, you can add all of it to the mixture, or you can mix it up, mash it up, and then once we make the individual pizzas, you can sprinkle a little more over the top. It's just preference, and it doesn't make a difference really. So since I accidentally dumped it all in, today I'm putting it all in. All right, so before I start to mash this, I am going to give all of this a stir. You can see a little bit there, the mixture. Right now, it just looks like nice garlic boiled potatoes. But we want to actually take this and we are going to mash it. You can do a couple different things when you mash. You can use, oops, you know what, I think I'm gonna grab a bigger bowl. Let's see here. Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and transfer this into a bigger bowl. I didn't know if I would need to, but turns out I do. All right, so you can use any different style or masher. If you don't even have a masher, you can even use a fork and start to mash it. It takes a little bit longer, but you have your mixture right here. I have two different mashers that I like. I kind of alternate between the two. We've got a couple of these in the restaurant, but it's just preference really. And you're gonna go around and completely mash this. Now you want it to be totally soft, and your texture that you are looking for is going to be that of a mashed potato. So it's gonna take a little bit of time, right? It's not gonna happen within the first couple seconds because you don't want anything to be chunky. You want it to be nice and smooth. So it is gonna take a little bit of time. So go ahead and finish mashing. Like I said, I'm gonna alternate between that masher and then this masher. This masher just kind of pushes the potatoes up through, just a little bit different style. I just alternate between the two. So take a second to finish mashing, and as soon as we come back, we will go ahead and patty them together. So our potato mixture is mashed, and we are ready to go ahead and form our pizza dough. So before you use the pizza pan, you are going to give it a nice little spray. Right, that's our version of greasing. Just because it does have the perforated holes doesn't mean that it can't stick to the top, so go ahead and make sure you spray it. Now I am going to kind of make two oval shapes because I'm going to make two different styles of pizza when we come back. This is a messy process, all right? This is kind of one of those get gooey moments, and that's perfectly okay. All right, so I'm going to see what we got going on here. All right, so these are going to be a little bit longer, more of a kind of almost like a French bread look to it. All right, so when you are making these pizzas, if you're using a pan that does have the perforated holes, we're going to scrape the bottom of it in just a second. But you want your dough to be decently thin. All right, you want your pizza to, it doesn't have to be perfectly round, doesn't have to be perfectly square. You can do whatever you want with it as far as shape-wise, but you do want all the way across the top. You do want it to be the same height, okay? So the thinner it is, the more crispy it'll get. The one thing that is different about vegetable crust pizzas, like a cauliflower pizza, or using like the potatoes right here for like a starch instead of flour, is that it takes longer to get that crispy finish. So if you don't cook this as long, it almost is inevitable that you're going to have to eat it with a fork and knife. If you want to eat it like a slice of pizza, you are going to have to make sure that it's crispy. Okay? So in order to do that, again, thin out your crust here. Like I said, I'm going to do two different styles of pizza after we bake the base. So that's why I'm creating two different ovals, I guess. Now this mixture would be almost perfect for this size pizza pan if we were doing one full pizza. So what I could have done was mix it all the way across and done half of it with the chicken Alfredo pizza that we're going to do, or the barbecue Alfredo, and then the other, but either way. So, okay, so we're going to leave this. What we're going to do is we're going to pop this in the oven, and it's going to go into the 400-degree preheated oven for about 8 to 10 minutes, okay? All right, so we have taken the potatskis, all right, the potato pizza crust out of the oven. You can see that it's going to be really, really hot. And then this is where you get to be creative and make whatever kind of pizza you want. So like I said, we're going to do 2 pizzas here really fast. All right, our first is going to be a traditional pizza, and I hope I have no sauce. I might not. I might have to get another jar in a second. Oh, actually, I'll be okay. All right, so our first is going to be just a traditional pizza. Our favorite in this house, we do pepperoni and crushed red pepper seed right in the sauce. And then also we put yellow banana peppers or mild peppers over the top. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and leave some room along the outer edge, just like we would for a traditional pizza. And that ended up being just the right amount. So we'll go ahead and do here. Like I said, we like the spice right in the sauce, so I'm gonna take some of the crushed red pepper seeds and just sprinkle it right on before I put the shredded mozzarella. All right. So next, I'm gonna go ahead and add just mozzarella cheese. Our pepperoni will be next. Not sure how many I'll need. And then we'll top it with the yellow peppers. All right, so that is a more traditional pizza. All right, and then the second pizza that I'm gonna do is gonna be with a white cream sauce. All right, it's gonna be kind of a play on a barbecue chicken Alfredo pizza, all right? So I think Jet's Pizza, they have one that's called Aloha, and it's basically that. So we have leftover chicken from the other night, and we did a shredded chicken topped with barbecue sauce in the slow cooker, and this is just leftover. And that's one of the great things about pizzas, is that you can really top it with anything. So if you have leftovers that you're trying to use, it's, you know, perfect for this. All right, so I'm going to use this sauce. This is a Prego sauce. It's a roasted garlic Parmesan sauce, so it's not exactly Alfredo, but it's got a lot of the same similar components. All right, so I'm just gonna pour that on there, and then we'll add a little bit more if we need to. Oop, I got a little bit of dripping on the side. So I should have been a little bit more careful. All right, I'm gonna give one little bit more spoonful right here. This is a thinner sauce than your tomato sauce, so you might need to kind of add a little bit of layers, and you just want that creamy look right to it, okay? I'm gonna do that instead of the tomato sauce, all right? And then we'll add the chicken. Now this chicken, like I said, is already cooked. It's been shredded. It's in the barbecue sauce, so it already has the tangy barbecue taste to it. Right now it's cold, just like your pepperonis. All right, so that is that. All right, and then lastly, I'm gonna add just a little bit more of grated Parmesan over the top of a recipe like this. It doesn't usually call if it has a cheese sauce similar to an Alfredo. If it has any sauce that's going to be like out of a bechamel sauce, usually it doesn't have mozzarella. So it's just preference, but if you want to try it. More cheese the better, right? Okay, so the very last thing that we want to do, if you want to add a little bit of garlic powder to your crust, this particular pizza, I've got a little bit of dripping over the side. Once we put it in the oven, it'll all be good. But I'm going to use a little bit of melted butter here. I already just put it in the microwave and melted it. Pastry brush over the edges. One reason that we want to do this, like I said, if you want to add a little bit of seasoning to the outside of your crust, awesome. If you don't, this is a good idea to use the butter too, because the sauce is going to absorb and add some moisture to the other parts of the pizza. But the crust, especially on this one that I did a better job on, doesn't have, you know, any moisture. So as you put it back in the oven, you don't want it to get super, super crispy, almost to a point of burn. So that's why you want to add some of that oil or butter, okay? All right, so then I'm going to just put a little bit of garlic powder in my hand and then sprinkle the edges. Some people may prefer to do your, do the garlic powder before you top it. It's really just preference, okay? All right, so then this is gonna go back into the oven for about 25 minutes. I realized a second ago when I went to go put everything in the oven that I misspoke according to the recipe. The recipe does call for the oven to be at 425 degrees. I had preheated my oven to 400 degrees. So when we put the potato crust in for the first section, I definitely left it on for at least 10 minutes. I actually left it on for about 12 minutes because the temperature was lower. So I kept the oven on at 400 degrees. I'm just gonna finish it out at 400 degrees, but my cooking time is going to be longer because the oven temperature is less. All right, so we're gonna put these back in the oven, like I said, about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we will take a look at them. All right, so we just have these out of the oven. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna let those rest for just a second before we transfer the pizzas onto the cutting board and before we plate them. One of the reasons you wanna let it rest is for just so the crust starts to firm up a little bit, okay? I did let it rest over on top of the stove top, so now that we brought them back over here, one way, okay, pizza pan won't be hot. One way to kind of tell if they are done is just to lift them as you go. Now I will remind you, all right, that this is not a traditional pizza, so you're not necessarily going to get that entire pull of, the entire pizza crust. One way to eliminate that separation is by using parchment paper, because then you can kind of slide it and pull it a little bit easier. But as long as your pizza will lift, then it is done. Okay, remember, not going to be like a traditional pizza where you can just, pull it up and pull it by the slice. So I will forewarn you, when you go to do this, it might not be pretty and some of your pieces may kind of fall apart. If you want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, let's do it this way. All right, we're going to see what happens. All right, we're going to take this piece. I can see that my pepperoni piece is just separating just a little bit. So what I'm going to actually do is use my pizza cutter, and I'm going to cut really gently so I don't scrape up my metal pan. But because it is a softer dough, you can do that. All right, it doesn't take as much force. All right, and then we'll pull that piece right there. All right, and then over here, looks like this pizza. Oh, see, we're falling apart a little bit. And seriously, this will happen, but it will taste delicious. So it's okay if it falls apart a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually slice it the same way that I did with the pepperoni. And I'm just gonna give kind of 3 slices here, because of kind of how this piece has started to fall apart. Now some of the white sauce is kind of oozing out of the sides, which is really, really delicious, or will be delicious in just a second. And our last piece right here. And then this piece right here was kind of our sacrificial piece. Sometimes that happens. It's kind of like when if you ever baked a pie, or if you've ever seen somebody bake a pie, a lot of times the first slice doesn't come out perfect, and it's the piece that you sacrifice. But nonetheless, it will taste good, and if you are making it for home, that's okay. Nothing has to be perfect. It's just that you guys are getting out of your comfort zone and trying new things. So when you go to plate, go ahead and throw your different pizzas on there. You can see that the crust does firm up a little bit, but again, you will probably want to eat this with a fork and knife. A lot of people do that anyway with pizza, me being one of them. And then I will take this last piece right here. All right. So the white sauce seemed to be a little bit softer than the tomato sauce when we were going and transferring out. But nonetheless, here you go, guys. They are all set. I hope you guys enjoy, practice. Like I said, the beauty about pizzas is you can make whatever you want for your toppings. All right, enjoy. Miss you guys.